It's Power 98.3. My name is Dee. I'm here with the beautiful and smart Anjali. How are you?
Hi, Dee. I'm good. How are you?
Okay, so here's the deal. Anjali and I are best friends. We follow each other on Twitter now and Instagram, and she has my number, and I have her number because we bonded over dinner yesterday.
Yeah, we bonded about musicals.
Yes, musicals and Game of Thrones.
And Game of Thrones,
and
totally.
Empire, the new show.
Definitely.
So good.
Which is so bomb.
I didn't get to watch this week's episode, though. I still didn't get to
I
watch
haven't
it
seen it either.
So I was telling her she's got to get on that scandal tip, though. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Anjali, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so basically I just came out with my first single. It's called Nobody, featuring Tyga. And all the proceeds for my music, they actually go into my nonprofit. It's called Jaws and Paws, and it protects endangered species and promotes education. And I actually studied marine science at Cal Berkeley. So I started this organization while I was still there, but I really wanted to, give music a shot. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated, I moved to LA, and I just kind of started trying to do my thing, in the industry. And it's been great because, both like my nonprofit and music, they've kind of been growing together.
Mm-hmm. So you skipped a little bit of detail. So we're going to go into it because I thought it was really interesting that you say you grew up with a pretty conservative dad that thinks, if you're not an engineer or a doctor, you're failing. So what was that like for you, because you loved music and you wanted to do that?
Yeah, so he was very conservative, like you said, and it definitely made it difficult just because, you want to please your parents. And you don't want to upset them, and you want to make them happy. Basically what happened was right before I graduated, I actually had accepted a job at this Marine Institute in the middle of the bayou. Mm-hmm. And at the last second, I told my parents, I was like, I'm not doing it. Sorry. Like, I'm going to move to LA, do whatever it takes. I'm going to, try music. Mm-hmm. So, it was really tough at first.
And what was the reaction from your parents?
My mom was supportive. I mean, at first she was a little iffy, but my dad was very upset for sure. So that was tough. But eventually it's kind of funny because people would come up to him, and a few months after, I guess, I moved to LA and I was doing music, people would come up to him and be like, oh, my daughter loves your daughter's, song. And he'd be like, what? Like, okay, so she's actually maybe doing something, legit. So then he kind of started, coming around, which was awesome. But at first, it was. Well,
your dad
really
is
tough.
a big deal. So just talking about your ethnicity, you're actually half Indian, half white.
Yes.
Right? And your dad is a big deal in India because he is the very first person to own a team, right? A professional sports team.
Yeah.
So how did he get into that?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. So he grew up playing cricket, and that's a really big sport in India. Yeah. And he didn't really know anything about basketball. He had never played before. He didn't even know what a layup was. So I actually was really passionate about basketball growing up, and I've played my whole life. And I joined this league, and there were 3 different teams in our division. And basically what happens is the coaches they basically draft players, and they chose, all the best players. And the 3rd team was left with just all the people who the coaches didn't want. Aww. And I had just kind of started, so it was me, I hadn't played that much basketball, and then a bunch of girls who had never really touched a basketball. And we didn't even have a coach. And so my dad was like, I'll do it. And I was like, oh, God.
How embarrassing.
Yeah,
Dad.
Exactly. I'm like, you've never played basketball, So he's like, no, I'll do it. So I taught him, the rules, and I taught him what a layup was. And I basically taught him as much as I could. And it's really funny because he actually used math and equations to figure out, turnover ratios and just basically, I can't even really explain it because I don't understand how his brain works. He's really, really smart. Mm-hmm. But I know that he used equations to figure out how to win basketball games. And in our first game of the season, we were up 25-0 in the first quarter.
Wow.
And for middle school girls basketball, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So it was just crazy, and we were winning, and we ended up winning the national championship literally based off of these equations. Mm-hmm. So it's funny, after that, he was just really passionate, about basketball, and that's how, the whole ownership thing.
No, he's not an engineer or a doctor either.
Right, exactly. I'm like, how can you? Yeah.